Thanks for joining us for Embracing the Reality of Amazon, how manufacturers, retail showrooms, and designers are working together to maintain relevance in the digital age. We have a really nice panel and excited for the discussion. This is the last item listed for sessions on the website. Before tonight's party, so I'll tell my kids that I opened for Chicago. So what we're going to basically do here is, we want to dispel and talk about this, misunderstood impending Armageddon of e-commerce and try to get a much better sense of how everybody fits into it, because obviously Armageddon it is not. And, that's why we have people from kind of all sides of the business here. But first I want to talk a little bit about, where e-commerce is now and dispel a little bit of the misunderstandings as far as what it's being used for. And the first thing that I want to mention is that this is where people are obviously beginning their product searches. More than half of consumers now are beginning product searches on online retail websites, with another 15% starting their searches at search engine. You can compare that to the brick and mortar side where it's, by most recent count, about 13%. And if we break that down even more, we can take a look a little bit more by channel. That about 29% of that is Amazon specifically. There's 90 million or so Prime subscribers in the United States alone, which just makes people's preference lean that direction when starting to look. You've got your traditional retailer sites and apps, your Home Depots, your Lowe's websites and apps. You have then the search engines, your brick and mortar, and then other online marketplaces. That's your, your Wayfair, your House. Those numbers are probably a little bit higher in this particular category on that last because of the prevalence of those sites. But Amazon is still probably the place where people are going first the most, despite the category. But what I want to point out here that's most important is that this is where people are beginning their searches. But there is a strong contingent of people that are amongst this large group that have no intention of purchasing their product online. They are not going to buy, a big expensive range or refrigerator off of a website, or perhaps they know that they need to work with an interior designer or a contractor or whomever else to fill the job. So what they're doing is they're doing research and they're making decisions on brands and products based upon the online presence of these brands. And then that goes to show you why this becomes important. Is that for a brand, it's not just the money or the items that you're going to sell online through that direct channel. It's really going far, as these numbers show, to influence people's behavior well offline. And one other thing I want to point out before we move forward, I think this is important, especially in this category, is that the generation gap, in online purchasing is largely gone at this point. And I think that's important for for anyone who kind of feels as if, the people making these decisions are maybe a slightly bit older. They don't do, maybe they start more of their searches in brick and mortar. Well, the latest numbers will tell us that that's not necessarily true. 53% we see here, millennials that have made an online purchase in the last 3 months, excluding groceries. And for non-millennials, it's at 52%. So what that kind of tells you is that, if there was once a gap, which you can kind of see historically it's now gone away. And people of all ages and all generations are doing this research and making some decisions online. You guys want to add? Good? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to start with this, and then we're going to pass it over to Vijay here in a minute or two. But what I want to talk about, and this is partially what my organization does, is helping brands to best position themselves online, specifically through Amazon, and use strategies to sell more, but also, again, position their brand in a way that's going to help out their partners. So, one of the things that I want to talk about, and again, Vijay is going to pick this up in a second, but, one of the best things that these brands can offer that can really help out their partners is accurate and complete information. Obviously, most of you have shopped on Amazon and seen, especially in these categories, there are just dozens of additional listings with incomplete information, incorrect information, bad product imagery. So getting people the right information is just so incredibly important. You can see the variation buttons there on the right. There's a pointer. That's not going to work. But anyway, you can see the boxes that say 19, 23, 27, or 25, 27. It's important for people to understand all the different variations of a product that you have. Because if someone is, they're looking at the 19-inch listing and they need a 27-inch sink, they're not necessarily going to know that this brand offers both of those. So it's very, very important for these people to understand the full array of products that a particular brand may offer. In addition to that, what we always talk about is how a brand is presented and how the information is presented. So if you take a look here, you take a look at these really nice branded images in this particular listing. It doesn't force people to read down into the bullet points to figure out the information that's pertinent to them deciding what it is that they want to purchase. So we've got, features that are important that differentiate from the competition. You've got specs here that make people ensure that they're looking at the right product. Cleaning instructions, which can obviously make people feel more comfortable with a certain brand. These are all things that not only make the brand look so much better, but make people, when choosing this and perhaps another sink that just has maybe 5 pictures of the sink itself, this is the kind of thing that's going to help people choose this brand over something that doesn't look quite as built out or informational.
Yep, just to add to that a little bit from a brand perspective, as this digital space evolves from being just a channel for transaction to more an evolving medium where increasingly top of the funnel customer activities like research, browse, design assistance, etc. is needed, what we're seeing is as manufacturers, we also have to participate to drive our brand presence there and make sure that we're building these strong, lasting, consistent brand associations with our end users. For us, where that journey really starts is having accurate, relevant, and rich content across different channels so we can really add value to both the end users as well as our channel partners, both brick and mortar and online. So we spend a lot of our time and efforts really managing the production and the distribution of the right kind of content specific to the digital medium, but also that drives activities to other offline channels. In addition to that, to drive a strong brand presence, I would call out 3 key levers that we have used as a brand and have been fairly successful at that. So the first one is having robust online sales as well as MAP policies that we're continuously managing and administering. Now, we can be 100% efficient, but the goal is to keep a clean marketplace so there isn't unhealthy disruption. Second is to engage consumers the way they'd like to be engaged with us. Ratings and reviews, question and answers, etc. are of premium importance, and we have a lot of activities focused around that area. Lastly, just assisting our consumers to make sure that they're engaging with our brand in any channel of their choice, and we are enabling that engagement, whether it's research or transaction, is also a key goal of ours, so we do participate in assisting that purchase journey as well. So what keeps us up at night as brands? What keeps us up at night is really the question of how do we get close enough to our consumers, and how are we using the intelligence and insights that we get from consumers to develop a strong brand presence and add value to our channel partners. So really there are 3 key aspects to what we spend our time thinking about. One is, are we sharing the right information? Second is, are we gaining the right insights and intelligence? And lastly, are we engaging with our audience or interacting in a quality manner, if you will? So we have to be very conscious of our long-standing partnership and make sure that we maintain the integrity of our multi-channel approach as we try to do that. But really the thinking is around those lines: information sharing, interaction quality, and gaining valuable insights so we can drive offline as well as online behavior and participate holistically in that growth, if you will. So that's really it from a brand perspective. And gaining those insights really helps. I think from a front-end perspective, we can partner with our channel partners to reduce cost of traffic acquisition cost. Back-end perspective, if we can partner from an operations efficiency improvement standpoint, it really helps deliver superior economics to everyone in this channel. And that's a strong focus of ours as well, if you will. I'm going to pass it on to Chip to give a little more color on this. So. It's not the color we were expecting, but...
Technical difficulty, hold on.
Here, you want to... There you go. Hit the play button there. In the middle. Hit the big one. There you go.
Great. So as Vijay mentioned, channel partners, Ferguson Enterprises, I'm going to talk from a perspective of how we add value and really how it relates to the whole community of contractors, designers, builders that we interact with. Information is transparent across all channels today. Ferguson has to figure out in the experience in our showrooms and our other channels, how do we add value? We don't make anything. Certainly we sell branded product across many different channels. So I've developed 4 quick bullets just to kind of go through what we kind of teach and train our own folks within our organization so we can clearly articulate our value proposition. So, but for any business, I think it's applicable whether you're a plumber, a builder, a designer. It's important when you're interacting with a customer to clearly know what your value is in that interaction. So, for example, in our showrooms, we make sure we have a curated approach where we connect builders, plumbers, designers with that customer and then deliver an experience of product selection and design and ultimately deliver to a home. So this is very important that that conversation happens up front, because in so many cases, if we leave it up to the customer to make a decision, they'll sometimes drift back to the online experience, which is fine, but it's very important that we educate them up front about what the experience would be, whether you're a designer or whether you're a plumber. And I think with all the information that flows through the internet today, it gets a little bit murky as you move through.
It definitely does. And I think it's really important that whether you're a designer or whether you are someone in the channel, builder or remodeler, you are also tasked with providing that same value, right, to your end user as well. So it's an interesting conversation here, because you have an OEM and the middle person, really, Ferguson, and it's the same thing that designers are dealing with: Amazon, the consumer, and the middle person, which is them. So how do you, as a designer, really utilize Ferguson without your consumer, right, really going directly to Amazon and buying? And that's what we're really talking about here today. That's really the elephant in the room conversation. It's like Amazon's out there, everyone's going, so everybody in the industry, right, is trying to figure out. Right. And that's what this conversation is really here for us to do.
And that really brings me to point number 2, which I think is important, and we've kind of been on a journey, and I call it product pricing transparency. Most customers can get any kind of information from pricing to great content on the internet. So, we've taken an approach where I would like to make sure that we have product transparency, but I would like to explain to the customer what pricing actually means, and then the goods and services that are attached to that, whether they're bundled in the price. I think it's very important that is discussed up front, because if it's, again, left up to the consumer, they gravitate back towards price. So I also think that it builds a level of trust. When you talk about a product that you can find it online, maybe at a different price, explain why, it builds that confidence to that customer consumer to still want to continue to do business with you. So moving to the third point, which is very similar, don't be afraid to talk about the online versus offline experience, because they are very different, and of course they come with different costs as well. So once again, taking it from a Ferguson standpoint and a showroom standpoint, we try to make sure we address that up front in the consultation, so they understand that this is going to be a different experience than just pointing and clicking, purchasing products.
Yeah, and let's talk about the online experience for a second, because if you are that designer, remodeler, and someone goes and buys a product online, what happens when you don't educate them and they use, let's just say it's a toilet. Do you know this? That if you use a tablet in your toilet, that the warranty is actually voided, because that tablet will corrode eventually everything that's in that toilet. So just a simple flush tablet that you use to clean your toilet, the warranty is voided. As a designer, remodeler, builder, showroom, even if you're a showroom owner in the room, that is value add information that you can provide. And it's that kind of specific value add information that I think it's really important for you to provide. And that way, okay, yes, I need to pay this person and not buy that product necessarily online, because this person is adding value and they've just proved it to me with that level of specific information.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting. It's what you're saying has become more and more important. You got to be good at your job, right? That's the biggest difference between with this new competition, or at least a new channel. The difference is you got to be good. You have to know your products. You have to be able to relay that in the right way, and you have to be able to show people that are that are your customers that you can offer something that they don't get in the online experience. But at the same time, there's going to be people who are who, no matter what, are going to all buy online, and they're going to be price conscious. And there's people on the other side who they're just not going to do that. They want to feel comfortable. You know, if you own a record store, it's a different story, right? If you own a record store, you know, you're in trouble because people feel free. They're going to buy a record online. They know what they're getting, a CD. But in this business, there's going to be contingent, a strong contingent, enough to keep everybody, you know, doing very well, that are not going to make that purchase online, even if they begin by looking there and experiencing all this. Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good tee up for the last point. There are customers that don't want the experience in a showroom, that don't need the design consultation, that don't need the curated approach. So how do you solve for that? I said at Ferguson we were guilty thinking we can serve everyone that comes into our showroom. Well, that's actually not true. And I think it's very important for all businesses to understand and segment their customers based on the service and offerings that they provide. And that gets me to the next point about a business model. We chose about 10 years ago to make a decision to open up another brand that had a completely different service offering in Bill.com. And that was strictly driven around the fact that our showrooms can't capture every single customer based on our service and our offering, because customers weren't willing to pay for that. So, but we do differentiate our offerings online from other e-tailers because we still offer a curated approach, but virtual, with virtual inside sales consultants that work remotely, and we offer great content and certainly add value in a different way. So I think it's very important for every business to look at the customer base that they serve, certainly the services they offer, and make sure they match up. Because in all too many cases, we do think we can serve everyone, and that's really not the case. So that's the point, that we've been on a long journey trying to make sure that we align our resources with the right customer segments. But that's a big key takeaway for us as a company. When it's transactional, we're probably not going to win against Amazon.
Just to add to that a little bit, and that's really how we view the world from a brand perspective as well. If you look at what we try to do on our own websites, as well as how we try to partner on our on online retail or research platforms, it's really, we're trying to highlight the value that every channel brings to the end user. And there are specific value propositions that we're trying to highlight. That's not just in the content production piece, but also in how we manage the experience with our end users. So as brands, we definitely recognize that reality is there are going to be multiple business models in a space like ours, and every channel or business model is going to have its own value proposition. And as a brand, we need to make sure that we are partnering with them to add value to that experience, if you will. So I feel similarly about that, Chip.
Yeah, the good news is our building industry is very complex. And if you're remodeling or building a new home, the complexity doesn't necessarily lend well to just a pure play online experience. So again, whether you're a plumber, whether you're a builder, a designer, there's lots of room for us to add value in the food chain. And I think that's the most important part. We'll be continued to be pushed on the online offline side, but again, communication up front to that customer to make sure you're clearly articulating the services you're providing, I think really helps close business and allow you to continue to stay relevant.
Absolutely. That communication tool, if you are a builder, designer, remodeler, that comes down to what? Your website in general, right? How are you communicating through your website what your value proposition is, and how specific is that communication so that people can clearly understand at a glance your value proposition to them versus going on to Amazon or any other site and actually buying it there directly. So I would really encourage all of you to really look at your site from the standpoint of the consumer. Like if you were just looking for a product, would you want to buy from you? Or would you think, gee, it's just going to be easier to go on Amazon and get it and have it shipped for free through their Prime program, since how many people are members of Amazon's Prime?
90 million, I think.
98 million people, that's just in the United States, are members of the Amazon's Prime program, which means they get 2-day free shipping, including any appliance or refrigerator that's on the site. So that's really important to really recognize that. It's very, very seductive. But what do you offer if you're a builder, remodeler, designer? If I live in Houston and there's a Harvey and all of my appliances are flooded out, if I buy from Ferguson, they have the service available to come out and fix that right away. What do you think they're going to do? Give preference to someone who bought it on Amazon or someone who bought it from their showroom, from a salesperson in their showroom? If you can talk about that story on your blogs, how many of you in here have actually some type of newsletter or blog? Can you raise your hand if you do any of that? Okay, so not very many of you. I'm going to really encourage you in this day of Amazon to get with that program, so that you can have that going out there. A blog is just a simple page of fresh content on your website. So the more consistently you post, the more that's going to help your organic search rankings on Google for your brand. And in that way, you have a chance to articulate your value proposition and show it and tell. The most important thing there is to tell a story. Tell a story about how you were able to service a customer from a Harvey or Irma or what's going on in California right now. And in that way, people will say, gee, well, if that ever happens to me, I don't really want to buy it on Amazon. That's a value that my showroom can provide. But that's important to communicate that somehow. If you're not doing that, eventually, you know, those sales will leak out over to an online retailer who can deliver free shipping. Okay, so what can designers and showrooms do to capitalize? I'm just actually this is really what I'm talking about, is having a blog and also having your website optimized for Google search. Also, I want to give you another tip. How many of you are using Google Maps to optimize your sales? Anybody? You can actually explain Google Maps probably really well, right?
Well, it's a little outside of,
okay.
of what I do.
But in terms of how designers and showrooms can capitalize on this, use what you can. Use the free tools that are available. Google Maps. Make sure your business is on Google Maps, your local business. If it's not, then consumers really have a hard. So do you know? So right now, how can you capitalize? How many of you are wearing an Apple Watch right now? Anybody? But we're all on our mobile phones in here, right? So what happens when you search for your company on a mobile phone, or any company nowadays? What happens? The first thing that comes up are the paid ads, right? And the second thing that comes up are what? The maps. Just go check that out right now on your mobile phone. So your organic search rankings aren't even coming up anywhere. Having your business on that map is the #1 thing you can do to capitalize on making sure that you're getting as much traffic organically as you can from consumers who want to buy from you. Now, when they hit your website, what are they finding? And that's what you want to make sure, that they find out, to Chip's great point, what is your specific value-added proposition? And that should really be the first thing on your site. Even if you do a great video on your site and put that out there, and then put that video out on YouTube and keyword enrich it, and let people actually see what you can do and the service you provide, and make it compelling, make a compelling story for them so that they really understand that. And that is a way that you can capitalize and not have all of your sales leak out over time to one of these guys.
You want to talk about the Amazon Associate?
So another way that you can capitalize is through using, so how many of you have any kind of understanding of what affiliate product marketing actually is? Does anybody have? No? Okay. All right. So basically, it's just putting a link on your website to a product. It's just putting a link on your website to a product that's actually on Amazon. So this is actually an additional revenue stream generation tool for you. It's not how you're going to make the most margin, but it is how you can make additional margin, because Amazon actually has what's called a local affiliates program now, which gives you the ability, if you're a designer in the audience or a smaller remodeler, you can become a local affiliate with Amazon. And that gives you the ability to have on Amazon your own URL. All right, Amazon.com/ABC designer. And then you can actually, in your store, you can actually set up a store on Amazon with product in it that maybe you don't have in your showroom. Listen carefully. Don't have that product in your showroom. When someone, if you drive that traffic over to that Amazon link, you're going to make somewhere between 5 to 7% on every sale. If you have a traffic driving strategy, you can make and if you get decent traffic to your site now, you can make a lot of incremental revenue by being part of Amazon's local affiliates program. Anything you'd like to add to that, Chad?
No, I mean, this is part of, certainly Amazon, trying to do their best to incorporate marketplaces of all size online into their infrastructure, into their culture. And, this is a way for people who don't have national distribution and their own brand and everything else to participate in the sales, in some of the opportunity that's online. And it's an opportunity that hasn't existed for a long time, and it is a great opportunity. You want to go, Chip?
Yeah, and I'll comment briefly on Amazon and Marketplace as well, because we do participate in their marketplace as a seller. Again, we can't deny the traffic that Amazon drives every day with search starting there for product. When the product becomes just a transaction and you want to participate in there, the marketplace side of Amazon can be a decent place to certainly sell your product, provided you're an approved detailer. So we do participate on Amazon marketplaces selling product when it's transactional only, no value add service, but we do get a piece of that transaction. And we made that decision because we felt, hey, it's additional revenue that we can drive, that we would not actually be able to touch that customer, one, on our own Ferguson website, number two, on our Build.com website, or number three, in our showroom. So we do participate in the marketplace strategy as Ferguson, as Build, on Amazon site when we feel it's strictly transactional. So that's just for the other folks in the room that may be part of the wholesale community, or any of the other folks that have websites. That is an option as well.
What about the IMAP strategy? Can you talk a little bit more about the IMAP strategy from a pricing standpoint and how that protects?
Sure. The IMAP strategy, I think I'd stay away from the word protect, but in general, the reason why we have a map strategy is because we are looking to make sure that we ensure having a strong brand presence. And there are certain products from a design, innovation, technology perspective that stand for what the brand stands for. And we want to make sure that there isn't unhealthy disruption from a pricing standpoint, because that impacts the brand image of the product. And that's why we have a map policy around our brands. So on the Delta brand, for example, and we go to market with 3 brands, Delta, Brizo, and Peerless, and varying degrees, if you will. On the Brizo brand, 100% of our product is map enforced, and on the Delta brand, a very high percentage is mapped. And the reason for that is really those products stand for what the company's brand stands for, and that's why we have that, if you will. Now, I do want to mention that all the big online retail and research platforms, Amazon included, are very good partners in terms of being adherers of your map policy. And that's what we've seen across the board. But on the marketplace and otherwise, there's probably some unhealthy disruption that happens with some of the smaller online retailers who may drive the price down and impact the brand image. And that's something else that we look to watch out for very closely and try to administer and make an impact on as well. So we are definitely believers in the map policy and other online sales policies as well, and we think it's a good brand management tool.
Yeah, I think, and Chip made an interesting point a minute ago, and I think that the takeaway all this is that there's a tendency to feel like everyone is pulling and pushing for the same business, and that there's going to be a winner and a loser. And I think, for instance, like the company that I work with, we help companies try to get market share on Amazon. For the people that want the value add, they're going to look elsewhere, and that's where this all exists. For us, we're just trying to help, Delta get more than their competitor for the people that are on Amazon that aren't seeking that experience. So, there's a tendency to think, hey, me and Chip should be at odds with each other here, but it's not that way, because it's just about carving out the pie a little bit differently than it did before. And, it's almost, if you are on that, if you are on the showroom or the designer side, it challenges you, because it makes you, like I said a minute ago, be better and provide more value, learn how to provide more value, but also just, it tests the quality of your ability to do what you got into the business for in the first place. And I think that is to the benefit of the brands and the distributors and to everybody. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, I take a couple seconds. I want to just ask each one of you, and then maybe we'll take some questions from the audience if we've got time. Where do you see this going? In 10 years from now, maybe 10 years, we're too far into the future, we're going to have drones delivering everything, but where do you see this? Where do you see the alignment between brand, distributor, designer, and whomever else in a place like this? What's the discussion we're having in 5 or 10 years?
So from our perspective, really, where the journey starts for us in terms of strategy planning and then operational perspective is from the consumer. The consumer in today's world does not see channels. Really, the channel lines are blurring, right? In terms of what really the consumer is looking for is a specific help along the purchase journey, if you will, starting from finding to consideration and then purchasing. And for us, we, from our perspective as a brand, totally recognize that if the channel lines are blurred and the consumer is looking at this holistic purchase journey, from our standpoint, we recognize that different channels, different entities among those channels, each of them provide a specific value proposition to help aid the consumer in that journey. And in the next 10 years, this is just going to become that much more pervasive, if you will. We're going to see a lot of distinct value propositions being added by specific business models, like Chip was mentioning, some broader entities like Ferguson participating certainly in multiple business models, but clear value proposition that they're looking to add because that's the only way to have a sustainable difference or advantage. But it is all going to be from delivering the best value to the consumer perspective, if you will. So as a brand, that's what we're looking, that's the journey we're looking to participate in, if you will.
Yeah, and I would agree with that statement as well, Vijay, but I also see that there may be some connectivity between installation, product design, that is more of a turnkey experience.
For sure.
I think that's only going to accelerate as you see labor and installation now being quoted separately by many third parties as well. So I think there'll be some connectivity in that experience where product selection and design and installation become bundled. Now, how that gets bundled, I'm not quite sure. We spend a lot of time thinking about those things because, again, those are all value-added services, and how do you actually break those down, clearly articulate the value proposition, and is that one company or is that multiple companies coming together? So those are all things that we think about today because it will be different, I think, in 5, maybe sooner than that.
And from my perspective, what I look at, what I really think is going to happen in 10 years is everything, of course you're seeing it here at the show, is everything smart home, and how is that going to impact everybody's business and all of the connectivity of every single appliance that we're seeing here, and how is that going to impact your businesses? And to me, that is the greatest, if I can inspire you, that's the greatest opportunity anybody here has, is to educate around smart home and set yourselves up as experts, because every general consumer out there is going to need help in that. So whether you're a Delta and you're coming out with some level of smart home product, or you're another brand, and Ferguson is in a perfect position to be that educator for anybody in here that's going through their showroom. That, I think, is a tremendous value add proposition. And that, to me, in 10 years, everybody, I don't know if you know this, but Coldwell Banker, do you know that Coldwell Banker has come out with a definition of smart home in combination with CNET, and that on their website, which gets millions of page views, homes listed as smart homes sell twice as fast right now. Like, that is a huge selling point. They have empowered all of their realtors to sell smart home kits for $999. So all of their realtors are now able to be smart home consultants in the home. So I see that there's a level of competition coming out there, to be really honest. And I would say to you, how can you position your business to be there with the competition that's coming out from other channels of distribution besides what's in this room? Because that is actually what's going to happen in 10 years. Everybody's going to want a piece of the pie. So how can you connect, or how can even a Ferguson really be a connecting tool for everybody that wants to actually be part of that? And maybe set up educational academies, whatever it might be. I know that the designers that I'm friends with that are here at the show are like, give us more education about all things smart home, because we're in the position of having to educate our actual buyers. And that is a true value add that any consumer cannot get on Amazon. If they need to know how to operate that smart home appliance that's going to be sold on Amazon, they don't know how to do that, and you all can.
Yeah, and there's one other point I wanted to make about with the future and some of the things that we're testing. Most of you have heard of augmented reality and the way showrooms may look in the future, and we're experimenting with some three-dimensional images and augmented reality on our websites. But I do believe selection and design may look very different. I think showrooms will become more experiential. So it won't be about product selection, it'll be about experiencing product. And I also believe that certainly as the digital age speeds up and products can actually be visualized in your house without walking into bricks and mortar, that'll continue to accelerate as well. And we are testing some of that today on some of our websites. But and you've maybe seen some of the manufacturers that have that are also testing it. It's still very expensive to create today, but I do believe that that is going to be part of the future, and how product is actually visualized and experienced. That'll be kind of an online, offline experience that you'll be able to do from a mobile phone, and then you'll also be able to experience it differently in a showroom, maybe where your products, all of your products actually work. You'll have less selection, but you won't need as much because you'll be able to experience them differently through augmented reality.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that statement, Chip. We are looking at that extremely closely because yesterday's world from a content perspective for us was really the basics, right? Product features, images, videos, installation, infographics, etc. But as mobile becomes a bigger and bigger play, and already is, right? There's augmented reality, there's visual search, there's probably shop the look kind of applications going around. That space is just going to explode, and that means something different for brands as well. So we are following that trend very closely to say, how do we partner as best from a experience management perspective on that trend? So couldn't agree more on both the smart and the mobile trend, if you will.
Yeah, we're testing some of Delta's products on our app now with augmented reality, where we can visually put faucets on your granite countertop on your sink, and you can visualize it there. It's a pretty neat feature, but it's still away from developing, and it's about 8 hours to develop one product. So very, very, very expensive.
So moral of the story, as much as this, the way we work in this room has changed over the last 20 years, it's going to change a lot more in the next 10 and after that. And all right, great. So I don't know how we are in time. We're good? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for any of us? Anything that you want to, we like
Don't
to
be
dig in
shy.
deeper? Yeah, absolutely. I think she's going to run over with the mic here. We can't hear a thing.
20 minutes.
Great.
Question for brands around direct to consumer. How in 5 to 10 years, how are these brands, what prevents them from going direct to consumer and cutting out the middleman completely? And how is it happening now, or is that in the future?
It's you, VJ.
So in general, as I was mentioning, what keeps us up at night is not the question of how do we go direct to the consumer from a transaction perspective. What keeps us up at night is really how do we get closer to the consumer. And that's from a data insights perspective, experience perspective, information sharing perspective, if you will. Now, as of today, as you notice, there's probably many manufacturers that go direct to the consumer. Some use it opportunistically, some use it from a value service perspective, et cetera. But our view of it is, in the next 5 to 10 years, will some manufacturers and brands need to go direct to the consumer? The answer is probably yes, for multiple reasons. The top for us may be there's probably certain value and service that the brands are best suited to provide for a subset of our products. And for those subset of products, for example, in our category, maybe the long tail of repair parts or the long tail of accessories is a good example. And in some of those categories, maybe there is a need to go direct to the consumer from a service perspective. But I don't think we're at a place where we would want to call it a broad-based play for two reasons. One is we're not, and in the foreseeable future, our goal is not to become the biggest destination websites for consumers. There are destination websites from an online retail research perspective, Amazon today being the biggest example, obviously, but others are catching on, Wayfair House, etc. And those destination websites, still, we have to partner with them heavily to drive that consumer experience, and that's where the majority of focus lies. The second area is just from a capability building perspective. There's all of these areas around content, experience management, engagement with the consumer, etc., where there is heavy investments to be made. Mobile, smart home, how do we partner on those spaces? And then, and there's a second set of capabilities that you need to develop if you want to get serious about going to the customer, i.e. have 50 distribution houses around the US only. And those decisions cannot be taken lightly, if you will. So I would say getting closer to the consumer, absolutely yes. Direct to the consumer, more from a value perspective, wherever it makes sense, if you will, is how I would like to think about it.
Yeah, and from a distributor's perspective, because we represent the brands, certainly you would think it's a threat, right? So we talk about that as well. They could have a buy button on a website tomorrow. But again, it goes back to my point about value add. So what are we doing in the experience to add value to the experience for that customer that's at Ferguson in a showroom or at Bill.com and then are online? That really differentiates us, because today, when you look at a lot of the common electronics, Apple products being sold directly by Apple, being sold at Best Buy has provided a lot of value to that approach for selling Apple products and selling accessories on top of that as well. So as a consumer, many people buy Apple products directly from Best Buy. So I think there'll be some shift direct to consumer from manufacturers, but I think there's still going to be plenty of space for for whether it's contractors, whether it's suppliers and showrooms to certainly add value and prosper with the relationship with their end user.
Definitely. That whole experience piece, so the augmented reality piece, as well as the virtual reality piece. Anybody here experimenting with virtual reality? Have you seen that booth here? Have you seen that booth here where they're doing virtual reality? Like hundreds of people around that space, and all like just a little bit younger than me. So I want to say that the virtual reality space for all of you that have showrooms is huge. If you could find a supplier in your local communities that can create a virtual reality space in your showroom, that would be an amazing way to get traffic in, and just simply place Facebook ads and show them that you're having a virtual reality. And you know you can place Facebook ads by zip codes and homes over $1 million. Everybody know you can target like that on Facebook? Targeting homes over $1 million on Facebook with ads. Super cheapest way you can ever advertise what you do. So that was a hot tip right there. It really works. So video ads on Facebook really work. So anyway, have that virtual reality experience in your showroom, even if it's just you hire someone for $10,000 for a week or whatever it's going to cost you in your local community. It will drive more traffic into your showroom, and it will also brand you as someone that's really thinking forward, and will definitely get that next generation consumer into your showroom as well.
Yeah, this is all going to happen, right? I mean, you have to go direct to consumer in a lot of ways for a lot of these companies, but you know, it's of no interest to VJ or to Chip to start offering an experience that's completely transactional. It doesn't help the brand. It doesn't, you know. So that's the answer to the question: is that there is developing this dichotomy of people that want to shop in different ways, and knowing that this is just too much of an interactive experience, redoing your kitchen, your bathroom, to move
So much
entirely to a
detail.
transactional industry.
Yeah, lucky in that way.
Yeah, great question, because it is the #1 asked question in our space today. So thanks for
Absolutely.
asking it.
Other questions?
Nobody?
We've answered every possible question, right? No. Oh,
There's one over there.
He thought he saw somebody. If not,
No,
that's okay.
okay.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Any other
And
final
then
thoughts? No.
I will actually say that right after this, I'll be moderating a conversation with these three gentlemen right behind us in the, literally right behind us in the Modena's Design Lounge. And so if you really want to get upfront and personal with these three and ask them any kinds of really questions about your business, it's right now, right there, and we're 5 minutes from now. So please come on over. Love to have you, and then we can just really have a deeper dive conversation about all of this, okay?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
Coming
Thank you
up,
very much.
Chicago. Okay.